Shalom Yesharallah. First and foremost, I'm going to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Recha, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the Akim that's preached the word in all truth and sincerity. Alone to Israelite foreigner brothers that are like the heathens. But the line of outside goes back to the nation of Israel, which the nation of Israel are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans through the prophecies and curses of Deuteronomy 28 chapter and throughout the Bible. So this is Brother Yakal. I'm back to the video, and today's video will be entitled Be Strong in the Lord. I was going to go on some precepts, and Lord willing, you brothers and your sisters out there be edified through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashim Shai. Because us in this faith, we got to be very strong in the Lord, man. As it says in the book of Ephesians, chapter 6 and verse 10, it says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashim Shai, and in the power of his might." Because the Lord, want us to be soldiers in his truth, which we all spiritual soldiers, and the Lord wants us to have a very strong spirit, man, because we come into some very, very dark times, which the scriptures call it Jacob's trouble. And we will have to be very strong mentally to be able to get through what's about to come upon the earth. And of course, it's going to be through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shimon Shai on how we're going to get through this, through Jacob's trouble. But this is Proverbs 24 and 5. It says, "A wise man is strong. Yea, a man of knowledge increases strength." Right. So a wise man in the Lord is strong mentally, you know, and because a lot of people out here they're not prepared what's to come. See, we already spiritually prepared. We already accept the will of the Lord on how it's going to be judged upon people, on how the Lord going to put the spirit on Esau to come down with great wrath to fulfill prophecy. We understand all those things, and we accept it. Because Esau is being revealed. Esau is at the end of his rulership. So his strength is diminishing, while the elect men of Israel, the house of David, their strength is they getting stronger in the spirit, man. And the Lord makes us strong mentally through our trials and tribulations. But when you jump down to verse 10, it says, "If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small." And right. And that's the thing. The Lord doesn't want us to faint in the day of adversity. Like how all these people is going to be. Because a lot of people like to portray themselves like they got it all together and figure it out. Which the Lord's going to humble that mindset, man. People trusting in their carnal possessions. Trusting in their money. You know, but it says thy strength is small if you faint in the day of adversity, man. So the Lord doesn't want us to be like this. You know, and going back to Ephesians 6 and verse 11, it says, "Put on the whole armor of Yahweh, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." Right, man. And how do we put on the armor of the Most High? Is by, first and foremost, teaching the correct doctrine. And that begins with the names of the Lord, Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. And by us, teaching the correct doctrine, the Lord grants us the hedge of protection, which Lord willing we're part of the elect. Because this truth is only for the elect, and the Lord is only going to protect the ones he loves. This is Psalms 34:7. It says, "An angel of Yahweh encamped around about them that fear him and delivereth them." So this is a hedge of protection right here. So the Lord has the angels guarding and defending the elect, man. and ultimately that's going to be played out in Jacob's trouble, according to Dan 12:1. When it's going to get so bad out here, the Lord's going to send Michael the archangel to help defend the elect and deliver the elect. You know, so we want to be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And wiles, according to our word, it's from the Greek word methodia, cunning arts, deceit, craft, trickery. Because Esau's gonna, you know, you know, through the propaganda and stuff, he's gonna promote a lot of deceit on us, man. He gonna defame us. He gonna lie on us. He gonna bring up false accusations upon us. You know, and but as long as we're good in the sight of Yahweh by Shemon Shai, the Lord's gonna vindicate us. The Lord gonna justify us, man. He gonna defend us, cause we know Esau don't play fair. So he's gonna, you know, um, as a coward he is, he's gonna, he's not gonna play fair. You know, but by us being in the faith and put on the whole armor of the Most High, we'll be able to stand against this devil, have a solid foundation, you know, um, standing strong against these Edomites. It says, verse 12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities." So this is not a carnal fight. This is not a. This is a spiritual battle. Because everything starts in the spirit and then it manifests into the flesh. Your thoughts. For example, when people think of these, because when people murder people, all that really started in the mind. Before they did the act. You know, so we not. This is just an example. So sin starts in the mind, and then you play it out in your actions. You know, so this is not a carnal battle. It's spiritually, man. It's a war. Esau is constantly warring, through his propaganda, through his media, through his lies and tricks and deceit. He constantly, trying to play in our minds, man. Make it seem like, playing tricks on our minds. It says, but against the principalities, which are demons. So we're fighting against demons. Demons happen on people to provoke us and aggravate us. And that begins with the Edomites, man. To your neighbors, to your co-workers, to, you know, people that's in the world, you know. It says against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, which are the elites of Esau, the wicked elite. We're battling against them. You know, say all Amalek, man. Small hats. These Edomites, they are chief enemy. You know, and they all want us dead, man. But Yahweh Shemal Shai is gonna Lord willing preserve us, man. Lord willing to the end against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of Yahweh, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand, man. So, and this shows you that in order to get through the times that we come into, we're gonna need the Lord. It's not going to be through, you know, man's wisdom on how he's gonna, our own wisdom on how we're gonna get out of these situations. Because remember, the Lord wants all the credit and just due, which He deserves. You know, so the Lord's gonna put us in tight positions and to the point when no man gonna save us except Yahweh Shimon Shai, so He can get all the credit and glory. And that's gonna happen when Esau come down with great wrath. The Lord's gonna show His power, man. That spiritual power to do divine intervention when He delivers the elect to the point when people gonna know and acknowledge that it's through the power of Yahweh by Shimon Shai, on how He's gonna deliver His elect, you know, and it's gonna spook them too. It's gonna spook these Edomites, man, and they gonna be afraid. It's to stand therefore having your loins girt about with truth and having on the breastplate of righteousness. And this also shows as well that this is the only way we gonna conquer these Edomites. Because we're not gonna conquer Esau by his own blessing. Which is carnality. The sword. which is a marinate gun, the weapons. We're not gonna conquer Esau like that. We're gonna conquer Esau by this truth. You see, and Esau can't handle this truth, man. You know, Esau, he got all the weapons. Esau got some shit out there, man, that we don't even know about. But when it comes to this truth, he can't come against it, man, because the gates of hell shall not prevail, as Yahweh Shai told Peter. These Edomites can't prevail against this truth, man. You know, they can't. They're not gonna prevail against the house of David. So stand therefore, having your loins girded about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, and that's a stronghold. You know, it's faith, man. You know that's a foundation right there, having faith in the Lord, because not all men have faith in the Lord. You know, not all Israelite men have faith. Which some brothers are stronger than others in faith, but we all, you know, we all a work in progress, man. So above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith you shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. So whatever Esau tries to throw at us, we'll be able to quench it. You know, whatever Esau gonna do in this media, whatever Esau, these councils, these edicts that's gonna be persecution that's gonna be applied to us, because Esau gonna apply pressure to us. You know, we're gonna be able to quench that, man. You know, through the power of Yahweh Shemon Shai protecting us. You know, it says, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of the Most High, praying also always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit. So prayer, which I gotta pray, start praying more. But you know, sending up those prayers constantly, man. You see, because that's our spiritual connection with Yahweh Shemon Shai. It says, and watching there too, watching for the prophecies with all perseverance and supplications for all saints, man. So this shows you right here that this is going to be the only way on how we're going to combat these Edomites with this knowledge, with this truth. We're not going to be able to defeat Esau through his own blessing with the sword. You know, the way the elect is going to conquer these Edomites is going to first be in the spirit, with this truth, and then it's going to manifest in the physical when the Lord gives us spiritual power. You know, uh, Lord willing, part of those men. You know, so this will be the only way on how we're gonna get through this, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemon Shai, through this truth, man. You know, so it's pretty much Yakin. I just want to make a quick lesson on that. Be strong in the Lord. Just gotta continue to fight Akim. We at the finish line. We at the home stretch. So just continue to endure, persevere, and keep praying to Yahweh Shemon Shai that he keeps you in the faith, man. So, Lord willing, I was edified, and until next time, Shalom.